recorded.
Can everyone see my PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to be talking about QGIS for use in your work with Locale Plane. And I understand we have a range of expertise this morning. So we're going to start with some basics about QGIS, and we will build through the morning. And the session is being recorded, so I will make this recording available to everyone. I'll send it to Bjorn after the session this morning, so you'll be able to review everything we go over. And just to introduce myself, I'm a GIS consultant and I work at Septima in Copenhagen. I had a master's degree in 2000 in geography in the United States. And I do a whole range of things from spatial analysis and cartography and quite a bit of teaching. I've been working with QGIS since 2005, and I've been teaching QGIS since 2009. So I've been doing this for a long time. And I'm a QGIS certified instructor and an OSGEO charter member since 2015. I'm also a QGIS author. I've written, actually, I don't think at this point it's 7 books on QGIS. And the most recent 2 here, QGIS for hydrological applications, probably doesn't really interest most in this course. But the one on the right is a really thorough treatment of all the features in QGIS. It's a large workbook that you can use to learn different skills in different parts of QGIS. It starts out with very basic tasks and builds as it goes through. And actually both of these books are being updated, and QGIS for hydrological applications is actually finished. The second edition is finished, and the ebook will be out in about a week. And I'm 90% done with the second edition of Discover QGIS as well, and that will be out by sometime in May. So those will be available as ebooks and paperbacks as well. And a little bit about Septima. Our office is in Copenhagen. We have 24 employees, and we do a lot of work with geodata, focusing on making open data sets in Denmark available, and focused on other open source GIS software. So we develop a lot of products for viewing data online and searching for data. And this includes QGIS plugins, such as the QLR browser. And we teach a lot of courses, both in QGIS, but also in PostGIS and other open source technologies, and also help with setup and just QGIS support in general. So today we're going to start with just a brief introduction to QGIS. And then we're going to get into your setup for QGIS. You have a very nice setup with specific profiles and project templates and map themes. So I'll explain what those are and how you can work with them. And then we'll start by adding some data to QGIS in different ways and learn how to filter a layer. And then we'll finish the morning working with print layouts, learn how to create a print layout from scratch, from the very beginning, a new one. And we can also see how map themes get tied into print layouts. And then we're going to work with the style manager, which I'm not sure people have worked with yet. And then there's a fairly new feature in QGIS called legend patch shapes, which can really help elevate a map and make it more intuitive. And then we'll finish up this morning working with print layout templates. And we'll have another 3-hour session on the 11th of May, and that will focus more on selecting and exporting layers and creating new layers from scratch. We'll be working with this format called a geo package. So I'll show you how to create new GIS layers and then how to digitize those. And a big part of that second session will be creating Boolean using buffers and snapping tools in QGIS. And we'll work on some more sophisticated styling, such as inverted polygons. And then we'll finish up by creating a couple of maps from Tillyforhold and Placering i Kommunen. So that's the outline for the course. And I think it would be nice if I could just have everyone introduce yourselves a little bit, so I know who everyone is, and just give me a little bit about your QGIS background, and so I can understand who I'm teaching today. So I'm just going down the top list. How about Suzanne?
Okay. Yes, my name is Suzanne, and I'm I'm working as an urban planner, and I have my experience with QGIS is not that big. I've been on a course once before, I think perhaps like 5 years ago or something like that, but haven't used it until now. And otherwise, I'll have to go back like 15 years in my career, since I have used what have I used? I've used AutoCAD, it was called, and I've used like MicroStation and things like that. But it's way back. But hopefully I can dig some memories and see some similarities in the data building or something like that. Yeah.
Good. Well, the good news is that QGIS has improved a lot in the last 5 years. So
good for me.
Yes. Okay. Who's next?
Is that me?
I can be next. Oh, yeah,
okay. Is it me or? Yeah, okay. My name is Annette. I also work as an urban planner, and I have no experience so far with QGIS. So I've got my notebook and my pen already. Yeah, so not so much experience with that, no.
Good. Well, we'll start with the basics.
Thank you.
And me. My name is Sue, and I also have a degree in geography and planning, and have a fair amount of basics experience with QGIS. Work a bit on a weekly basis, but all the basics.
Good.
Next, Martin, I work as an urban planner as well. I have not that much experience with QGIS, but I've worked a bit with the Esri, the ArcNet, but no experience with QGIS up until 1 month or something like that.
Okay. So that's QGIS that you've used, Esri's.
Yeah.
Yep. Good. It looks similar enough that you shouldn't have any problems.
Hello.
Yes.
My name is Jens. I'm an architect, so we have used a little bit of QGIS, but mainly other software, which in some ways is similar to QGIS. So there's like so I've used different mapping software, different 3D software, but there's a lot of, and Bjørn has been showing Martin and I QGIS a little bit, In some ways, it makes sense because the software is similar to other software that's vector-based, but in other ways, it's very different.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. Okay, good. So thanks for introducing yourselves. It really helps understand who I'm talking to, since we're online and I can't actually be in the room with you. So I have, throughout the way this will work is I'm going to introduce topics, and then I will give you a short opgave to work on. And then, we'll probably take 10 or 15 minutes for you to work through a short task. And then you can just ask questions with me or Bjorn as if you have questions as it comes up. And as I go through the material, we have a small enough group. Please ask questions if you have them. If something doesn't make sense or you need a better explanation, just ask, and that will be good. If something doesn't make sense to you, it probably doesn't make sense to others too. So yeah, please, I encourage you to ask any questions as I go through the material.
Before you start, Kurt,
Yes.
I'll just ask, did you hear echo as well? Yeah. So I'll just try to put you on a speaker here instead, and then we'll have one source of audio and one source of mic. Just a moment. Can you hear us now?
Yes. Clear.
Perfect. Good. Just continue, please.
Okay. So since this is a short online class, I wanted to give you some resources to use after. So you'll have the recording of today's session. I will also send the PowerPoint presentation I'm going through. And then I also have written up step-by-step instructions for most of the tasks that we'll go through today that you can use as a reference as you try to work on maps on your own. And we'll take we'll take a break at the top of the hour, and maybe take a break at the second hour too, just to see how the morning goes for coffee. So starting with QGIS, it's an open source software project, and that simply means that it is a software where the source code is available to everyone, which isn't always of interest to most of us. Aren't programmers like that. But the nice thing about an open source software project like QGIS is that it's very quick to get changes and new features added, and it's fairly straightforward to request a new feature or report a bug. And so the community around QGIS is very friendly, and it's kind of evolved into a very special project. And there is a local Danish QGIS user group, and it's one of the biggest QGIS user groups in the world. And the Danish group is one of the top supporters of the QGIS project every year. So in fact, we have the next QGIS user group meeting is going to be in Odense on the 5th of May. So if people are there, I'll probably see you there. So this software has been around for quite a while now. This gentleman, Gary Sherman, on the right, started developing QGIS in 2002. So it's been a 20-year, this is the 20-year anniversary of QGIS. It used to be called Quantum GIS, but it's officially just been changed to QGIS several years ago. And it runs on every major platform. So you can run it on Windows or Mac or Linux, even on a Chromebook. So there's a lot of ways you can run QGIS. And the version that we are using, I think, let me know if this is wrong, Bjorn, but we're using 3.2.2. This was released last October. And so QGIS has a very fast development pace. They release a new version every 4 months. And because of that, they every spring release one that is called the long-term release. And so right now 322 is that long-term release. And what that means is that 322 will stay for an entire calendar year until next spring without any new features. So when you're in an office like yours and you have products to produce, this is the best one to use because it's not going to change. It's going to stay unchanged for the entire year, and you can just use it. There will be throughout the year kind of subversions of it that fix bugs, but no new features will be added. But there's now the next stable release is 324, and there's actually even nightly builds of it that you can install. And then on Windows, it's actually easy to install all these simultaneously, but I'm sure everyone there is just going to be working with the long-term release. So a little bit about GIS. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but obviously when we're working in a GIS, we are representing parts of the real world in what we call data models. And we call them models because the GIS data for streets or parcels aren't the actual objects in the real world. They're models of those objects. And so they have error associated with them, and no GIS data set is perfect. And they have a scale attached to them. So it's always good to just be aware of that reality, is that we are trying to represent the world with GIS data, but there's always going to be a little bit of error. They're not going to be like the outline of a building isn't going to be the perfect outline of a building. It might be very close, but not perfect. And we have two main data models, vector and raster, and we're going to focus on vector data because that is largely what you're using. Vector data is for discrete objects like a building. It's a discrete object because you're either in the building or not in the building, or you're in a lake or you're not in a lake. They have it. There's an edge and a boundary to it. Unlike elevation, which can vary across the landscape. So the vector data model has three main geometries: point, line, and polygon. And all of these are placed based on coordinates, and they each have attributes. So every polygon feature will have attributes with like feature IDs, names of things, etc. And with the vector data model, there are several common file formats. There's the Esri shapefile, which even as old as it is probably the most common vector format globally. There's a new one called a GeoPackage, which we will work with especially on the next course. And then there's a spatial database called PostGIS. And PostGIS is actually an extension of the database, which is called PostgreSQL. And a lot of your data resides in this database. And there are other formats, but I don't think you need to concern yourselves so much with anything other than the first three in the list here. So the shapefile itself is a collection of files. And so it's called a shapefile, but it's actually a collection of files that collectively make one GIS layer. And a shapefile is either a point, has point geometry, line geometry, or polygon geometry. So it's one of the three. And there are different files. So there's the .shp, which is where the name comes from, the shapefile itself, which stores the geometry. Then there's a dbf that has the same prefix, and the shx. And so all three of these are required to have a valid shapefile. And there may be other components of it too. You can get a shapefile that has up to 8 or 10 pieces to it, but the three that are important are these three right here. So the other format that we'll be working with is GeoPackage, which is an open format that has several advantages over the shapefile. And one of the main ones is that a shapefile, because a shapefile is based on this old DBF format for the attributes, a field name in a shapefile can't be more than 10 characters long. And that can be limiting when you're trying to come up with a new field name. And if you try to save something into as a shapefile that had longer field names, those will just get cut at the 10th character. So shapefiles are common, but they're not the best format for all uses these days. The GeoPackage is much more modern. It doesn't have that limitation on field names. I think the field names can be up to 255 characters or something. And there's also no upper limit for the size of layers in a GeoPackage. So it's a much more flexible format. And it's now the default format in QGIS. And then there's PostgreSQL PostGIS. And this is a relational database that you can store your GIS layers in, and it's extremely powerful and very fast at serving large GIS layers. So that's a brief introduction to that. This is what the interface to QGIS looks like. So you're going to have a panel here called the browser panel that is allows you to look at your file system, and you can use this to find data sets locally on your computer and add them to a map. There's also a layers panel, and this is again very similar to Esri's ArcGIS. This is where your different layers will be stacked that you add to the map. There is a profile up here. So whenever you see this kind of square bracket, or it says author here, that is a QGIS profile. And we'll talk about those because in your Kommune, there you have they've set you up with a minimal profile that basically sets you up with just the tools in QGIS that you need. And it does some other things that we'll talk about. Makes your job easier. There's toolbars, a menu bar, and then when you first open QGIS, if it's a brand new installation, you'll see. Whoa.
Yeah.
Gå in i
Testing. No echo.
Yeah,
Okay.
so now it should be fine again. Yeah, just continue, Kurt. Thanks.
Okay. I think with the minimal profile that you have, you won't see this, but so if you are just a regular user of QGIS and you open it up, you may see thumbnails for recent projects. There's a news panel and project templates, which you do have project templates, which we'll talk about. There's also a locator bar down here, and this is a feature that gets overlooked, but this is a kind of a master search box for all of QGIS. It's very handy, and it does other things in addition to that. You can actually even use it as a calculator. You can search for addresses in it, all sorts of things. So it's a very useful little widget. And then you have the status bar that will show you your coordinates, your map scale, the coordinate system that you're using, etc. So the user profiles. So if we go back up here, I'll have, if I've saved my project, I'll see the name that I saved it as. And if I am using a specific profile, it will be in these square brackets up here. And the profile stores things like you can set a default coordinate system. You can set the language so that it might be, you know, your profile might be in Danish, so you're using the Danish translation of QGIS. You can specify, it stores what plugins are installed and which favorites or shortcuts to folders are set up, which panels and toolbars are turned on and where they're located. So it kind of sets up the whole interface to QGIS for different purposes. So people will use profiles for different projects sometimes. You might have one for cartography and one for analysis, but you have a minimal profile that has been set up for you. So this is a screenshot that Bjorn sent me that shows your QGIS installation. And if you go to the settings menu, that's where you find user profiles. And so you will be using the minimal profile that has been built so that you can kind of focus on your work, and it strips away things that you don't need to concern yourself with. And it has plugins that you need installed and configured and things like that. So the profiles are really useful just to help you get your work done. And you know, you can see that you can always create new profiles for other purposes, but this has been set up to help you do your work. There are also project files. So when you save a QGIS project, it gets saved as a QGIS or QGIS file. And they're largely the same. Basically, when you see a QGIS, this is a zip file, and inside it contains this QGIS and a QGD. This is a QGIS database file. And so when you save a project, you can, the default is the QGIS, but you can also save as and choose this format. So you will see both. You don't really have to probably concern yourself with it much, but just want to give a quick explanation of why you might see one or the other. The QGIS file that's inside here is basically XML, and it saves everything about your project, what layers you have loaded, where you're zoomed into, which layers are turned on, which are turned off, how you have them symbolized, any filters that you can set for layers, things like that. So also map themes are stored at the project level. So there's a lot in here that gets saved in a project. It basically, when you click save in QGIS, it basically saves everything exactly as you look at it. So if you were to close out and reopen that project, it will come up exactly as you saved it. The templates are a way to save a default set of layers basically in the project. And so you have several project templates available to you, so you can open up different templates for doing different sorts of maps. So we're going to talk about next is adding data to QGIS. So once you have it open, how do you start adding data to it? So there's three main ways. There's this thing called the browser panel. And that is, if I go back to this is the browser panel here. And so you can navigate through your file system, find a GIS data set, and drag it onto the map. There's also a data source manager, and there's a lot in common between these two. You can do the same thing in both places in many cases, but that's another way to add data. And then there are plugins. So there's, you've probably used these, the Data Fordila, Data Forsuning, and the QLA browser. And these are all ways of, these two are basically online portals for data. And so you can choose from different data from Geodeco, etc., and bring them into QGIS. So looking at the browser panel, it's this panel on the left here. And so again, I'm looking in my folder for the project, and I can right click on a folder in here and choose to add it as a favorite. And this can really help when you have your data kind of nested, you know, several folders deep somewhere. Instead of having to navigate to that folder every time, you can simply save it as a favorite, and it then creates basically a shortcut to that folder, and it makes it easy for you to get to that location and add data. So let me reboot this again. So again, to do that, you simply find the folder that you're going to be working with, right click on it, and from the context menu, you choose add as a favorite. And then you'll find that under your favorites. And you can always remove those by right clicking on them and just choosing remove. But once I've found my local data on my machine, I can right click on a layer and choose add it to the project, and it adds that layer to my project. So here I'm adding buildings and the Kommune boundary, and I'm going to zoom into the buildings by right clicking on it and choosing zoom to layer. So that's one way to add data to QGIS. Another way is the data source manager. So this button here that looks like a red, yellow, and blue rectangle is the data source manager. And it has a lot of tabs for different kinds of data, but it also has a browser panel tab that is exactly like the browser panel. So it's kind of duplicate functionality. And so you can use this in the same way to add data to your project. There's also a vector tab, and the vector tab, you can use this similarly to navigate on your file system to a vector data set, like a shape file in this example, and select it and click add, and it adds it to your maps. So you can add your data either way. There's no one best way. It's whatever you feel comfortable with and whatever easiest for you. The third way, when you're dealing with some of the plugins, I first want to explain these map services. So there's an organization called the OGC, the Open Geospatial Consortium, and they come up with standards for serving map data across the internet. And there are three main protocols, and the ones we're going to focus on are WMS and WFS. So WMS is a web map service. Web feature service is WFS. And the main difference between these two is that if you choose a WMS service, it's going to just serve you a picture of the map. So it's very good for air photos or background maps. But you're not getting the actual data. In other words, you couldn't select features and save it as a local shapefile if you have WMS. You can't change the symbology. It's just a predefined picture of the map. WFS, on the other hand, will actually serve you the vector features so that you can interact with them. You can change the symbology. You can use this tool, the identify tool, and click on a feature and see the attributes for it. You can save it as a local layer, all that sort of thing. So, and if you're needing the actual data, WFS is what you're going to want to choose. If you're just looking for a background map, WMS would be a fine choice. And WCS is for raster data, and we don't need to concern ourselves with this at the moment. So in QGIS, there is a plugins manager, and you can use this to activate plugins that you already have installed or find and install new plugins. So if I click on the installed tab, I can see which plugins I have installed, and just checking the box next to it will turn it off or on. There's a not installed and some other settings tabs in here. But most of the time you're working with just the all or installed tabs. And if you're on this all tab, you can search by keywords to find plugins that might be what you're looking for. So if you put in Denmark, you'll find Datafordeler, Dataforsyning, GeoSearch Deco, for example. If you put Septima in, these are all plugins that Septima has created. So we're going to look at the QLR browser in a minute. Danish address tools. So this plugin manager is designed to help you either turn on or find new plugins that will help you with your job. So this is the Datafordeler plugin. It has a lot of data from GeoDenmark, and has matrikel data, orthophotos. Dataforsyning has a lot of data from GeoDeco, and for each one of these, you'll see in parentheses WMS, WFS, and so you can see what kind of data that menu has. So you have to choose which one is going to meet your needs. But as soon as you choose one, it will just add it right to the QGIS map canvas, and you have that data. So these are really handy plugins for accessing a lot of the Danish open data, including background maps. Then there's the QLR browser. Yes?
Sorry. Oh, look at another.
Thank you. The data, the GeoDenmark, is that for the municipality, or is that the entire nation of Denmark?
These are all nationwide.
Nationwide. Can I set it so it's just the municipality?
No, what you would do then would be choose, like if you needed the actual features, you would just choose the WFS version and then select the features in your locale plane or whatever the situation is, and then save that as a local layer.
Okay.
And that's something that we'll be looking at on May 11th, for sure. That's on the agenda. It's not a difficult thing to do. If we have time this morning, I might be able to show that. So the QLR browser is a plugin that allows an organization to have a central library of layers. And these QLR files are files that point to the data source. So the data source might be a PostGIS database. It might be an online WFS service, like Dataforsyning serves out. It might be a local file. It can be anything. And it also stores the symbology. So it's a really handy plugin, and Solrød Kommune has a nice setup for QLR files that's saved in your minimal profile. And I also wrote a blog post about the QLR browser. So if you want to visit this link, let me put it in the chat. This explains how to use the QLR browser and what it does, if anyone wants to read that. So Zoom has a little chat window, and I'm pasting the link to that blog post in the chat. Other questions on it, on anything I've covered so far? Nope.
I don't think so. Yeah.
So the QLR browser, the way it gets configured is that you go to this settings menu in QGIS and then choose options. And this is the options window, and there's a QLR browser tab. And here you can set the folder where all your QLR files are. So this is already done for you, but that's how it's set up. It's just pointing to a folder that has all these QLR files in it. And once it's configured that way, the QLR browser is a tab here, and you can see that it has, you can set up different categories of layers, and just checking the box next to each one of them will just turn that layer on, and you can turn it off. So you can just use the QLR browser as a panel to just turn layers off and on, and they're going to come in already symbolized the way you need them symbolized, and so it's very handy. So let me just show, I want to show one other thing about the interface. So this is a kind of a brand new QGIS project, and I don't remember how yours is set up, but by default, QGIS will have the layers panel here and the browser panel here. And especially if you're on a small laptop, this can get kind of crowded and difficult to use. So these panels can be moved around. So for example, I can take this layers panel and I can just undock it. And so these panels can be put anywhere. If you have 2 monitors, you could even drag this onto a second monitor. But what I like to do is put the layers panel and drop it onto the browser. So when that browser panel gets all blue like that, I can drop this and they'll now be tabbed next to each other. So I have access to both of them, but there's more space for each of them. And then I can do the same with the QLR browser. So if I go into my plugins and turn on the, oops, let me do that again. So this plugins menu is where you access that plugin manager that I showed. And if I choose manage and install plugins, went onto my other screen, I get the plugin manager. And if I go to my installed plugins, I can see that I have the QLR browser turned on. There it is. So if I check the box, you can see the QLR browser appears. And I can put this in this same left-hand series of panels here so that I have access to all 3 right here. And then I can start turning on layers such as air photo. Let me turn on something that's a little more local. And so I'm going to instead of being zoomed to all of Denmark, I'm going to right click on this one delområde and choose zoom to layer, and it will zoom me into that area that we're going to be working on. So right clicking on a layer in QGIS gives you this very handy context menu that allows you to, for example, zoom to the layer if you can't find it. Show feature count, the number of features in the layer will be showed in the layer name. And then you can get into the layer properties. And next week we'll get into, or next class, how to export layers. There's an export option here too. But you can see it's very easy to just toggle layers off and on with this QLR browser. And then the layers appear in your map canvas. If I'm going to use the data Forsyning plugin, I can go down to GeoDanmark, for example, and turn on Bookning, and it will load those. And so these are now being served as a WFS service to me. There's also some WMS ones that are very useful, such as the Baggrundsquote. So I can turn on Scamquote Dempel from there, and that's an example of a WMS service, just a nice background map. And these background maps scale. So if I zoom out, it will show me different information than if I zoom in. these are all the zoom and pan buttons up here. So the one with the plus, the magnifying glass with the plus, allows me to zoom in by dragging a box. The one with the minus sign will zoom me out. Let's see, what other was useful. These are the previous and last. So this will zoom to my previous extent or the next extent. So it's kind of like the back and forward buttons on a web browser. It will remember all the different map extents that you've been to and allows you to go back and forth. And then the pan button lets you, with the hand, lets you just slide the map at the same scale. And then finally, the browser, if I want to add some data, I can browse to the, show you how to set a favorite. If I get, you know, if I have my data in my documents on Windows, that can be kind of a deep place to find every time. So for example, the folder I have set up for this course, but once I find it, I can right click on that and choose add as a favorite. And now if I scroll to the top and expand favorites, I'll see that favorite listed there. And I can go in and browse for local data, such as this shapefile, and I can add this to the project by right-clicking on it. So what, now that I've introduced all that, I'm going to give you a short task. Where's the slide? So I'm going to have you open up QGIS, load the minimal profile, and then experiment with adding some data. And that minimal profile, you're going to find from this settings menu. So when you open up QGIS for the first time, you go to settings, user profiles, and I don't have your setup, but you're going to see a profile that says minimal, and you'll choose that. It will open up a new version of QGIS with that profile loaded. And then you can work with that minimal profile, which will already have your QLR browser loaded, I believe, and these data dealer and data Fasooning plugins loaded. So you can experiment with adding some data with those. And so let's take about 10 minutes for you to experiment with that and just ask me questions as they come up.
Yeah. Vi siger til, hvis der er noget, som ser underligt ud af det.
Jeg synes ikke, der er nogen, der sejler til noget.
Nej, det ser underligt ud. Ja. Det er noteret.
Hvis vi kan nå til den næste en advanced digital, så er det perfekt. Lige i røven af, at vi havde snakket sidste uge, så sad jeg i går og skulle prøve at forlænge.
Bjørn.
Ja.
Jeg kan ikke få min den der minimal profile frem. Den der user profile. Okay. Eller jeg kan godt få den frem, men der sker ikke noget, når jeg trykker på den knap.
Det er sikkert bare fordi, du kun har den som mulighed.
Okay.
Så den er allerede inde.
Efter projektnavnet, det hvor der står Untitled Project.
Ja, der står bare QGIS, der står ikke noget med minimal der.
Der står kun noget, hvis man har mere end en profil. Okay. Så hvis man kun har en profil, og det har man som standard, så står der ikke noget. Nå. Men lige så snart man laver en anden, eller hvis man har, jeg har en default for eksempel, som er affyldt af en tidligere QGIS, og det har du måske også. Ja. Men ellers så tror jeg, det er rigtig fint, at du bare er i den. Så skulle det gerne virke med QLR-browser og sådan, men ellers må vi lige tale sammen. Prøv at se, om du kan få lidt forskelligt til at virke sammen.
Ja.
Did you get that, Kurt, what we talked about?
Most of it, but not all.
Okay, it's just, you know, when there only is one user profile, you don't see the name of the user profile in the brackets. So if you have just got installed QGIS. It's just a minimal profile. So that was confusing it a bit, that she couldn't see it in the brackets. Yeah. Hopefully it's working.
Yeah, hopefully.
But I can't.
Since I don't have your exact setup, I couldn't exactly.
Yeah.
But does your minimal profile have the QLab browser and the plugins already set up?
Nu er det browseren, skal jeg så over i valget og gøre det derovre.
Skulle lige opgradere det. Ja. Prøv nu her, ja. Jeg kan se, hvor meget dansk er.
Er det så ikke bare fordi de kommer over det, men jeg skal jo ikke højt på dem?
Nej, vi kommer, den skal lige over ting, tror jeg, den skal prøve at se, vi går over i lag der, ja. Prøv at højre kigge på kommunegrænsen.
Det er
den der øverste, ja, det er præcis, og så zoom. Der er sådan noget at fryse lidt.
Jeg skal prøve at lukke det. Det er noget.
Så noget det der kommunekraften, den kan også lidt. Måske det var bare lige den, der også lige der. Ja. Det der årsmål, det gider heller ikke. Det har jeg et sted, hvor jeg havde gang.
Okay.
Så årsmål, det bliver en førvare for sig. Ja, det er præcis, den bliver brugt til miljøforfølgelse. Nu har jeg noget, ikke? Så kan du sige sådan til dag. Har du noget, og så kan du prøve at sige,
Vi har det på browseren, vi kan trække fra Bjørn egentlig.
Ja, vi har ikke noget sådan database-mæssigt. Det har jeg igennem QLR-browseren. Ja. Så det der er ellers, det når man begynder at producere noget selv, så har man jo sådan nogle geocache nede i projekter og sådan noget.
Det er også lidt, hvad det ligger i forskellige matrikler. Er det ejerforhold, eller er det bare matrikler?
Prøv at trykke på den gang, så vil I se.
Og det er ejerforhold.
Ja, så kan du se i dag, der er så en forklaring, hvis du går ned i den tab, der af. Og så får du den ud, der er sådan en lille pil ud til venstre for ladet. Og så kan du se, hvem er de forskellige. Sådan.
Ja, det er det, der også er i teknisk kode.
Ja.
For eksempel.
Ja, for eksempel. Tilfældigt. Så en måde det er den her QLR-browser. Og så en anden måde, det er så de to plugins, der er heroppe. Datafordeleren og dataforsyningen. De har nogle af de samme lag, men der kan man også finde. Og det er så derfor, hvor jeg for eksempel skal tage årsfoto fra.
Okay.
Ja. De findes også begge to. Den ene, den der har mange forskellige år.
Ja.
Og den anden, den har så
det er en stor bid.
verdens lige lås.
Ja.
Og når I skal lave noget, så kommer I ikke til at se sådan her ud helt. Altså det her det er sådan helt på scratch. Right? projekt, som er sådan en skabelon, så vi tager det kosmologi til lokale plan. Men det tager vi først hul på, tror jeg, næste gang.
Bjørn, må jeg lige låne dig? Hvordan kan jeg måske dele skærm eller noget? Ej, det er måske også noget rod, så kommer jeg ind i den der præsentation. Ej, ved du hvad, never mind. Jeg tror, jeg er nogenlunde med.
Eller vil den lukke noget fra QLR-browseren?
En gang til? Ja, det vil den gerne.
Ja.
Men altså, det vil den gerne, og jeg har også fået lagt nogle lag ind, men jeg synes bare, altså på det billede, jeg har fremme, det er stadigvæk bare hele Danmark. Jeg kan ligesom ikke zoome ind på, eller jeg kan selvfølgelig godt zoome ind sådan, hvad kan man sige, manuelt eller sådan, men jeg kommer ikke ind til for eksempel Birkeengen eller noget.
Nej. Du kommer ikke ind til
er det meningen, eller hvad?
Det kommer an på, hvad for et lag du har lagt dig ind. Hvis det nu er et landsdækkende lag, og du siger zoom til laget, så vil den bare zoome derud, hvor du ser hele landet.
Nå, okay.
Ja, så hvis
hvis
du tager QLR-browseren, har du taget for datafordeleren måske, eller dataforsyning?
Jamen, jeg har taget noget for alle tre egentlig, for at prøve det, men det kunne godt være, hvordan... kan du lige prøve at vise mig, hvordan jeg kunne få noget for Solrød? Fordi den, jeg har nu, det er bare... Så tog jeg for eksempel kommunegrænser, men jeg har stadigvæk bare mit det klassiske skærmkort, står der. Og det er bare det, jeg ser. Jeg ser ligesom ikke de andre.
Nej, de bliver måske ikke vist. Det kan være, at den lige skal opdateres alligevel igen. Det var i hvert fald det, du ser over Susannes QGIS. Den igen skulle opdateres, den her plugin. Hvis du går op i den menu derovre, der hedder plugins.
Ja.
Og så går ind under installere, tror jeg det hedder.
Nej, den har jeg...
åbner jeg lige min, den har jeg ikke åbnet endnu, så kan jeg bedre guide dig. Så skal du lige ind og opdatere dem. Der er en knap, der hedder Upgrade All. Og der tror jeg måske, det kan være derfor, at din QLR-browser ikke vil vise ordentligt.
Altså hvis jeg går ind under, den er ikke aktiv, den der Upgrade All.
Okay, så har du en folder ude siden, hvor der står
Not installed.
Upgradable eller sådan noget. Eller du kan sige reinstall, hvis det er, den ikke vil opgradere.
Hvor hedder den, sagde du hen? Hvorhen?
Den har du, når du er inde under dem, der er installed. Installeret. Og så trykker på QLR-browser i den liste. Og så siger du reinstall. Prøv en gang at se, hvordan det er.
Den prøver jeg, reinstall.
Så håber jeg, at den hopper op til en anden version, og det kunne gøre noget.
Ja, nu skete der, Og hvad så siger du så? Så lukker jeg bare det her igen, eller hvad det der plugin?
Ja, du kan godt lukke det igen, og så
prøver jeg bare den der zoom to layer igen, måske, der skal jeg ikke en skid.
Nej, så skal du lige tilføje laget en gang til for QLR-browseren, men det er ikke sikkert, at den er synlig nu.
Nå. Nej, det er den nemlig ikke, den der QLR. Nu har jeg kun layers og browsers. Jeg har ikke den der QLR-browser, den er ikke fremme lige nu.
Nej, så skal du gå op, så kan du gå ind i plugins igen på den måde, som Kurt viste. Så gå ind i plugins igen og finder QLR-browseren, så skal du lige under de installerede.
Ja.
Og så ved QLR-browseren, der er det der rette ben. Det skal du lige slå fra, hvis det er slået til, og så slå til igen. Så skulle den gerne
altså fluebenet der, eller hvad?
Ja, det er præcis fluebenet, ja.
Ja, tak. Ja. Og så slår det til igen?
Ja, og så prøv at se, om den bliver synligt for dig ude i venstre side af din skærmen om bagved.
Det gør den dernede, men jeg vil jo gerne have den op. Så skal jeg bare hive i den på en eller anden måde, eller hvad?
Ja, det er præcis. Ja.
Lækkert. Nu kom den derop i hvert fald. Altså.
Det var godt.
Okay. Og hvad gjorde det så? Gjorde det så, at jeg kan zoome to layer, eller hvad?
Det gør, at du nu kan tilføje et lag, og så skulle den gerne vise laget også. Jeg tror, du
Nå,
før,
så de andre lag, jeg lige har tilføjet, de duer ikke, eller hvad?
Nej, der har været en fejl i en tidligere version af QLR-browser.
Nå, så okay.
Ja.
Nu prøver vi adding QLR file to layer panel. Zoom to group. Nej, det vil jeg ikke. Zoom to layer.
Ja, så skal du så ramme den, du har tilføjet.
Halleluja, det virker skide godt.
Ja. Men jeg skal lave en opdatering på den her minimale profil, og så skal det rulles ud til folk. Sådan. Jeg skal bare være helt sikker på, hvordan at jeg gør det, og forhåbentlig ikke det overhovedet.
Altså, jeg synes jo allerede, det her kursus er en succes, fordi jeg har sådan set jeg har forstået noget allerede. det er allerede over mine forventninger, lad mig sige sådan.
Ja.
Jeg er glad, det virker.
Ja, det er godt, det virker.
Skide godt.
Okay, does anyone need should we take a break? Or
Meget gerne.
no?
Yeah,
Okay.
it would might be nice with some fresh air here.
Og et toilet.
Ja.
Hvor lang tid holder vi pause, Kurt? Eller how long is
10 minutter.
10 minutter.
Ja.
Deal. Godt.
Så.
Vi ses om 10.
17 år. Ja. Wow.
Er det åbent her? Jeg ved ikke, om det bliver noget.
Det er sikkert lidt.
Læs ud i kontoret.
Vi er så klar.
Okay, perfect. Okay,
jeg skulle bare lige tænde min mikrofon.
Okay, so the next couple things I want to introduce are project templates, map themes, and layer filtering. And then I'll have another task for you to work on. So not only do you have a profile, you also have templates, and these are project templates. So if you go to your project menu in QGIS, you should be able to go to new from template. And Bjorn, I think you set up this locale plane X template for this course. So you can open up this template QGIS project, and this will come pre-loaded with a lot of layers.
Pretty cool.
There are also map themes. So map themes, you have a lot of layers in that project, and map themes basically define which layers will participate in a map, such as Placering i Kommunen. If you choose that map theme, it'll show you just the layers you need to make that overview map. So these are really important for that, for creating locator maps or creating maps of different topics. And when you open up a print layout, you can tie a print layout map to one of those themes, so it filters the map to just that topic. So I believe, beyond that, these are the map themes that should already be loaded in that project.
Yep.
6 of them. So if you, where I'm getting this is if I go to the layers panel, so that I'm looking at layers, the third button over looks like an eye, and there's a little arrow next to the eye. And if you click that, there's a menu. So this map theme menu will open. And from that map theme menu, you can see the predefined map themes, and you could check the box next to one, and it will turn on just the layers that are part of that map theme. and then you could go and toggle on a different one, and so you can see how that works. You can also add new themes, which we'll talk about. It's also possible to filter a layer. So if you have, for example, a layer that has all the locale plane for the whole commune, you can filter that to a particular plane idée. So let me get into QGIS here. So just in this little demo project that I started with this morning, if I have added this layer that has, this only has one locale plane, but I'm going to pretend like it has all of them in it, and I want to filter it. So I would right click on this layer and choose properties, and that will open up the layer properties for this particular layer. And there's a lot of tabs down the left-hand side, but we're going to work on the second tab, the source tab. And this has like the layer name, it has the coordinate reference system, but then there's this provider feature filter section. And I can use this to build an expression that will filter the layer. So to do that, I'll click this button called Query Builder at the bottom right. It opens up this Query Builder window, and this will have on the left-hand side all the attribute fields for this layer. And so if I know that I want to filter using the plane idée column, I can find that here in the list of fields, then double click on it, and that will add it to my expression down below. And this is better than trying to type them in. I could type plane idée there, but there's special syntax in these expressions. And if you just click your way through it, you'll avoid making mistakes. You can see that when I double click on it, it puts these double quotes around the attribute column name, and that's important. So plane idée, and then I can use the equals operator. And if I have this particular field highlighted, I can search for values in that field off to the right. So I could choose a sample. And again, this is a bad example because I only have one feature in this layer. But if we pretend this is the whole commune and I'm looking for a particular plane idée, I could search for it in here. I could start typing in there, and it would start filtering the list based on what I've typed. But I'm just going to double click on this value that I know that I'm filtering on, so that my expression now says plane idée equals 107.89942. And I can click the test button down below, and that will let me know if it's working or not. It should just return one result, which it does in this case.
When would you use this? Can you give me an example?
Yeah, so this is, say you're going to work on one particular locale plane, and you want to bring in the layer of locale plane Granza, and you want to filter that so that you're only focused on the one locale plane that you're going to be working on.
Okay, but don't you open a certain project, don't you, for that specific?
Yeah,
locale
I guess.
plane?
Yeah, but well, I guess I'm thinking of a new project. Maybe it doesn't exist. And Bjorn, this is where I need your help to see if I'm describing a realistic scenario.
But it's because when we are creating a new locale plane, Annette.
Yeah, lytter.
Yeah, and you need is it okay if I say Danish, Kurt?
Oh yeah.
Ja, good. Det er fordi, det er den måde, vi har sat det op på, den her projektskabelon. Det er sådan, så der ligger, har du fået den åbnet, Annette?
Ja, den har jeg åbnet. Ja, det har jeg, ja.
Og der ligger en masse lag, der hedder plangrænse.
Ja.
Og plancentrid og sådan. Og de har filter på. Og lige nu peger de ned på én lokalplan. Men hvis du så brugte det filter, der er på de lag nu, og prøvede at lave kort ud for det, så vil det jo være grænsen til det forkerte lokalplan afgrænsning, du fik.
Det er fordi, der findes noget data, som har alle planerne i
Lige
kommunen.
præcis.
Så det er, når du lægger den ind i kortet, så i stedet for at den viser alle planerne i kommunen, så skal du få centreret på den, lige præcis den plan, du skal bruge. Og der kan du sortere
okay.
Kurt,
Men jeg tror, ja.
Er det ikke sådan?
Jo, lige præcis. Så sætter man det filter, sådan så den peger hen på det rigtige. Ja. Altså den, du har inde i COVID-plan, det er ID, som du har oprettet og fået, den sætter man den til, når vi har tegnet den ind, og så kan man få den vist.
Det er lidt ligesom,
ja, sådan at...
Da du sagde zoom til lager, viste det hele Danmark. Det vil du gøre, hvis du har et lag med alle lokalplanerne.
Ja.
Så vil du gå ind og sortere i det, så zoomer til det lag, du skal bruge, eller kun viser det lag, du skal bruge.
Men kan man bruge, for eksempel hvis det er en revision af en eksisterende lokalplan, kan man så med fordel hente den gamle?
Den samme afgrænsningsforlægning.
Ja, og hente det, og så arbejde videre i det.
I virkeligheden kan du så åbne dit gamle projekt, hvor det ligger med dine kortbelæg, og så kan du bruge den her ud som udgangspunkt, og så gemme den som revideret eller sådan noget, ikke? Så har du det gamle, og så kan du lave nyt.
Men hvis vi har det gamle projekt,
ja,
så kan vi hente, jeg tænker bare geografien indenfra.
Ja, lige præcis. Det er det, der er ideen, for så er man sikker på, at det altid er den rigtige geografi, ikke? Så den her henter ned fra COVID-plan og ligger i vores database.
Hvis vi fortsætter den her med den rigtige.
Ja.
ja, fordi så du henter den i COVID-plan, det der plan i det der.
Det der data, ja, geometrierne er hentet fra COVID-plan. Så de er tegnet ind først til COVID-plan, så er de hentet ned, og det er så der, vi henter dem fra, ikke? I det her.
Det er godt, det er modtaget. Ja. Super.
Så det er vigtigt i forhold til at filtrere, det er, at du rammer det rigtige lokalplan, simpelthen. Det er bare det. For ellers så får du vist alle sammen, så bliver det ikke kort i pleje i hvert fald. Ja.
Det er godt, tak.
Okay, godt.
Ja, det skal øves, ja.
Okay, so now that I've set this and I've tested it and I know it's working, I can just click OK and OK. And I'll see this little filter icon now next to that layer. And if I put my mouse over it, I'll see the filter expression for that I've just set. And you can click on that filter and bring this query builder window back up to change it or whatever you need, or clear it. But once you've done that, you'll see that little filter, and so you can always just hover over any of these filters to see what the filter is for that particular layer. It's just a little symbol that lets you know that that layer is being filtered. So another thing I can, yes.
It's just for, you don't have to build that query for when you in the project it is already built, so you just have to change the value. So now you know how it's built, and it's possible to build expressions as Kurt showed you, but it's just the numbers. So it's if you just have the numbers and copy them from COVID-plan and insert them in the links inside of that, and then say OK, then it will change to the other location or constant. So it's only the numbers actually have to change here, because it's set up like this with all the filters already existing for different views or layouts of the location or constant. Yeah.
Good.
Thanks.
We're not really going to work on symbology much today, but just to show you one little feature, since I have this nice stipple roll symbol on this Planggrenze, I can right click on this layer. Another thing you can do is go down to styles and copy that style, and right click on this layer, go down to styles and paste that style. So if you're ever working with a new layer, now it's pasted that style onto this layer, And so that's a really handy thing sometimes if you want to reuse a symbol. We're going to talk about symbology a little bit more later this morning. And then another part of symbology, this paintbrush icon on the left side of layers panel is for opening the layer styling panel. So if I click that, it's going to open this panel up, usually on the right side of QGIS. And this lets you do any styling to a layer that you would like. So you can see how this layer is styled and change any of that from there. So the other thing I just briefly introduced was map themes. And in this particular project, I don't have any right now. It's a brand new project. So just to show you how those work, you already have some. So if I have another project here that I can bring up. So if I already have some map themes set up, I can go to this map themes menu, and I have one, Planlæggerne i Kommunen. So I can check that, and I'm zoomed in way too far. But if I right click on this and choose into layer, you can see this is a map theme for that locator map where the locale plane lies in the Kommune. So that's what this map theme does, is it just turns on all those layers for me, so that makes my job easy. So you can identify those and set up these map themes as you need. And how that works from scratch. So let's say, you know, these are the layers I want for a map. I can go to the map theme drop down, and then I can choose add theme to create a new one. So I'm just going to call this, you know, call it 1, and click OK. And now I'll see that in the list. And then I could add the buildings to it, and I could add a new theme. Actually, let's see. I guess that was already turned on. So let me replace. You can replace a theme too if you've made a mistake. So now I'm going to turn off the buildings, and I'll call this a new theme. I'll call it toe. And so now I can go and toggle between these two different map themes. So you can use the map themes that have been built for you, and you can also build your own map themes that way. So with that, let's give you time to experiment with this a little bit. So you can start by loading, if you haven't already, the locale plane X project template. Oh, one other thing, since I have it, I forgot. Sorry. You can, if I have locale plane X loaded, it's also possible to save that as a local project. And I think, Bjorn, this is something you wanted me to show. Okay.
Yeah, that you you save it on your own.
Yes.
Maybe not your C drive, but maybe a W drive, or maybe a common drive, so it's accessible for others. I don't know how you do in your different because then it's available for others as well. If you save it there, and then what I talked about was the folder structure card with the, having if you have a geopackage or shapefile, so it's a relative path, and that it's possible to remove. That was what I considered was maybe nice to know a bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's look at that. So I'm kind of pretending here that I have locale plane X loaded.
Yeah.
One thing I can do is, we've looked at layer properties a little bit. You can right click on a layer and open up properties for that layer. And that's where we're doing that filtering. The project also has properties. So you can go to the project menu and go to properties of the project. And here there is a setting on the general tab for paths. So this is, there's two choices, relative and absolute. So this has to do with where the data are in relation to the project file, the QGIS file that you save. So I think, Bjorn, you're thinking they should have that set to relative, yeah?
Yeah, exactly, because if it moved the folder with it included, then it will work still. But that's the thing in QGIS that you have to learn in the start, that it's relative, and if it's not like that and you move something, it can't find it. So yeah.
So for example,
yeah, I think so. That should be.
So drag this over. So in my example, I have a folder for this course with it's a little messy, but I have subfolders for data and my presentations and styles. So I have things organized in here. And if my project is set to relative paths, I could right click on this Solrød file or folder, and I could copy it and paste it onto a thumb drive or another drive. And when I went to open up this project, it would still find all the data because I have relative paths set and everything is stored in this one folder. So wherever I move that folder, it will still work. If you choose absolute, this is not what you want to do probably. This will store the drive letter. So it'll store like the W drive or the C drive or wherever you have that folder. And so if you move it to another drive, it won't be able to find the data because it's in a different place. So it's best to use relative, and I'm fairly certain that is the default setting now. So I don't think you'll have to change this, but it's good to be aware of. So if this is if this is the Locale Plane X template project that I had opened, I can go to the project menu and go to save as, and I can save this onto my local drive. So maybe you're going to put it into my GEO folder and save it as, just as an example, Locale Plane X quote, and save it there. And now I have a local copy of that project file. So you can also do that. It's fairly simple. So here we have a short task for you to work on, 10 minutes or so. So open up the Locale Plane X template project. You can experiment with saving it as a local project into a folder that makes sense, into a drive that makes sense. You can try the different map themes, and you can experiment with changing this number in your filter to filter it to the one plane-grense that we're going to be working with. And if you want to, you can also experiment with making a map theme. So you could make like a map theme. I think you already have this as a map theme, but Bjorn, if you have other ideas for what they might experiment with for creating a new map theme, they could experiment with that.
Yeah, matricle map is a possibility as well. Yeah.
Yes. And that would simply, to do that, you would simply turn on just the layers that you wanted to be part of that theme, turn everything else off, and then go to the map theme menu, choose add theme and give it a name, and then you'll have that theme.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to change the plan ID for the entire schematics in the layers panel, or do we have to do it for each layer?
You would have to do it for each layer.
Okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Vi prøvede at se, om man kunne lave en variabel, som den brugte, i stedet for, men fordi den spørger ned i databasen, så kan man ikke, altså så bruger den det derfra, at det er en lokal variabel, der ligger i projektet. Så man skal ind og gøre det enkelt. Men copy-paste, ikke?
Jo.
Okay, den Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V, men det er sådan lidt tedious. Ja. Til gengæld, når det er gjort, så skulle det gerne være sådan ret lige til at kunne lave kortbelæg og sådan noget, ud for de settings. Altså i virkeligheden er det jo samme lag mange gange her, kan man sige. Ikke? Det er bare forskellige styles. Hvordan går det nettet derhjemme?
Jo, det går egentlig meget fint. Jeg blev bare i tvivl om det der try different map themes. Altså helt konkret, hvor der blev lige i tvivl om. Det er det der, er det der øje, eller hvad, hvor vi skal op og kigge der?
Yeah, that's what. So that simply means
på den
going
måde,
to this
ja, okay.
and just clicking on one of those.
Ja, okay, på den måde map themes, ja. Jeg
And
skal lige
I
have det
asked
ind i mit danske hoved.
Yeah, det er godt. And I asked Kurt for introducing how do you create new ones, because you know, if you find out that you're creating the same combination of layers for a map again and again, it's just easier to create that theme as and add it with a name as Kurt showed, and then you can link it to your map layout so it follows that theme. So if you change anything in the theme with which kind of layers in there, it will be updated in your map as well. And it's very nice that it's linked, because if you have different maps that you created, if it only follows what you see on your main map here, then it will change every time you change what layers you are using or watching it. But I think that will make more sense after the next course when we try to make it maps.
Ja. Og det er den rigtige talrække, det der i forhold til planen i dag.
Ja, og så mangler du nogle de der enkelte om.
Sådan er det.
Ja. Bare enkeltplinger, det er den, der er der. Fordi den der, når det er dobbelt, så tror jeg, den opfatter det som som om det er en af kolonnerne. Og når den har enkeltplinger omkring, så opfatter den det som om, at det er indholdet, tekstindholdet der. Eller talindholdet der.
Ej, for helvede det også.
Ja, så det kunne jeg altså bare og så med de der pinde omkring os. Ja, det er meget rart, så kan man bare lige klikke og sige kontrol.
Men burde den ikke lave en afgrænsning nu her?
Jo, og det har man også gjort. Men den er et andet sted.
Okay.
Så nu så kan du så højre klikke på ladet og sige zoom to layer. Så skulle du gerne komme over til der, hvor den nye grænse er. Hvis den er fundet af. Måske ikke så meget.
Hvis nu jeg for eksempel er på, hvis jeg har mit zonekort fremme og sådan noget, hvordan får jeg den så ud til sådan, at den laver den der, at den ikke er helt tæt på, men heller ikke kommer fuldstændig ud fra universet? Hvis du forstår, hvad jeg mener, Bjørn. Altså sådan så jeg bare har det hele Solrød Kommune sådan i kassen her. Det kan godt være, at det ikke lige giver mening, når jeg sidder der. Ja.
Så vil jeg sige zoom til kommunegrænse, hvis du har slået det lag til fra QLR-browseren.
Okay, det har jeg selvfølgelig nu så. Jo, men den er sat til. Og så... okay. Yes.
Kan du ikke finde noget på at lave test, så du finder noget? Så var det 4 tal. Kurt.
Yes.
I think the number is missing on 4, right before the number 2 in the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just couldn't find out, but maybe try now and see if it works. Yeah, super, good.
Oh man, on school.
Maybe I put the wrong numbers in I don't know.
Typo.
Nu kan det være, at baggrundskortene ikke kommer på.
Skal vi baggrundskort?
Det er fordi, man både skal have klikket en af her og der. Okay.
Ja, du skal have begge dele, ja.
Så skal man ikke have overbevist på. Check.
Og så kan I godt tage lidt tid at lukke. Altså det er forskellige elementer, de består af i det her baggrundskort, så det kan godt tage lidt tid, og alt efter hvor mange man zoomer ind og sådan noget.
Den der making af fremtidige forhold theme, den er der jo allerede. Ja, det er godt Sune. Jeg kan godt se det.
Ja, det er rigtigt. Man kan lave en ny, kan man sige.
Okay, man skal prøve at lave en ny, okay.
Ja, det kan være det i fremtidige forhold. Men I skal lave en. The reason I asked Kurt for this was because you need to make one for byggelinjer next time. Så derfor er det godt at kunne finde noget at oprette en, ikke? For når I så skal lave et kort, der viser fremtidige forhold med byggelinjer, så skal I jo have en lidt anden lagkombination i det her tema. Så ideen er, at I sådan prøver, hvordan opretter man det her, ikke? Det kan også være, at I vil, nu er jeg jo ikke særlig erfaren i lokalplaner endnu med kort, men jeg kan forstå, at der er forskellige, ikke, som der bliver lavet, alt efter hvad man vil vise.
Jeg kan altså ikke finde ud af, jeg kan ikke huske, hvordan man lavede det der, et nyt tema hedder det.
Så skal du ind under øjet.
Ja.
Og du skal sørge for, før du går derind, at du har slået de lag til, som du tænker, det vil jeg gerne have i mit theme her.
Okay, ja.
Så de lag, der er tændte i den rækkefølge, du vil have dem der.
Yes.
Og så siger du, så trykker du på øjet.
Ja.
Og så siger du add theme.
Altså, nå ja, det var det, ja.
Og så skal du give den et navn. Jeg ved ikke, hvad der sker, hvis du giver den et eksisterende navn, om den så spørger, om du vil overskrive, men giv dem et nyt navn, det vil være godt.
Hvad egentlig, hvis det er et barmarksprojekt, om der er ikke nogen grænser i, som man kan få planlæse?
Jamen, så kan man jo lave et kort bare med matrikler som baggrund, ikke? Jeg ved ikke, hvordan I plejer at have et.
Ja, men jeg tænker, at vi skal tage planidé. Det er jo meget hurtigt der med at tage planidé. Men jeg kunne ligesom lave en shape-fil, og så på den, eller kan jeg også lave noget til planlæser, som ikke er udgivet nogen steder, eller...
Hvis det er sådan, at få lavet noget nyt, eller sådan. Der skal vi finde ud af processen helt.
Ja, det
sådan jo. Men man kunne godt lave en geopackage eller shape-fil, hvor man ligesom tegner her, tænker jeg, at det skal være.
Ja.
Og så sender jeg med. På et eller andet tidspunkt skal vi i GIS tegne det ind, og sende det til kommuneplanen, ikke?
Ja, det er præcis, og så kan jeg bruge det her plan.
Og så kan du bruge det dertil, når vi henter den ned. Man kan tegne op og alt muligt, men det skal I nok komme til også at lave. I har jo prøvet det, ikke, med byggelinjer. Så.
Ja, det er præcis.
Hvordan går det? Er vi klar for mere?
Ja.
Yeah. Okay. The next topic is going to be creating a print layout. And so I'm going to walk through how to create a print layout from scratch. And then we'll finish up with how to create print layouts from templates. But I think it's important that you know how to create a print layout from the beginning. So in QGIS, when you're going to design an actual map with a legend and a title and the map, it opens up as a separate window. And there's 3 ways you can open that up. You can go to the project menu and choose new print layout. There's you can hit Control P to open that up as well. And then there's also this button that will open up a print layout. Another thing from the project menu is there's this thing called the layout manager. And this is we'll look at this more later when we get into templates. But this will, if you open this up, it will show you all the different layouts you have in that project, because you can have multiple print layouts in a single project. And it will also let you choose different print templates to create new layouts from. So once you open up the print layout, this is what it's going to look like. It's going to have a sheet of paper that you design your map on. And one of the first things you need to do is set the sheet size and whether it's portrait or landscape. And this is done by right-clicking on that sheet, and then you get a panel off to the right that will let you choose the sheet size and the orientation, so you can set it up just the way you need it. Off to the left, there's a whole series of buttons for adding different map elements, such as the map, text, legend, scale bar, north arrow. There are also some navigation buttons that let you basically navigate around this sheet of paper. And this can be helpful if you're ever designing a large kind of poster size map. Sometimes it's useful to be able to zoom in, especially with the 1-to-1 button, to see how labels are looking at that scale. These are the buttons for exporting the map once you're done into an image or a PDF. And then this whole series of buttons here is for grouping, ungrouping, aligning, distributing objects, like that you see in a lot of other graphic programs, like Adobe programs. And then once you add something to the map, such as a legend, and you select it, this item properties will be the properties for that particular object. So this item properties is, you're going to use this a lot, and it will change depending whether you have a map selected or a legend or text or a scale bar. So this will be properties of whichever object you have selected. This is just a slide that shows you all those different buttons for adding different objects to the map. There's a lot that you can add. Usually you're just going to be adding a map, text, legend, scale bar, but there are other things as well. And there's also a menu. A lot of this is duplicated. So there's an add items menu at the top of the print layout. And if you look at this, it's going to have a lot of the same, but it also has some different things, such as adding dynamic text, where you can add the current day. And this is a really handy, if you want to add a date to a map, this is really handy because it will use an expression for the date. And that means that every time you open up this print layout to make a change, it will update it automatically to the current date. You don't have to keep changing that. So I'll show you how that's done. So I'm going to walk you through how to do this. I'll just do a simple map. So let me go ahead and see. Yes, I'll go ahead and use this project, and let me turn on a couple more layers. I'm going to make a new theme. I'm going to call it Matricle Court for this. And then I'm going to open up a new print composition. So I'm going to go to the project menu. And down here, you have all the options relating to print layouts. So I'll choose new print layout and I'll give it a name. And click OK to open it. So this is the way the print layout window will look, and I'll go ahead and make it full size. These buttons up here again are for navigating around the sheet of paper. So for example, I can click the zoom full to zoom into the piece of paper more tightly. And I'll start by just adding the map. So, and I'll leave room at the bottom for a title and a legend. And so with a map object, you can, by default, it's going to be the same view of the data that you had in your main QGIS window. But I might want to, in this case, change the orientation of the sheet actually. So let me back up. Now that I'm looking at my map a little more, I think I'm going to show you this first before I add the map. So I'm going to, I think I need to make this a portrait orientation instead of landscape. It'll fit better. So I'm going to right click on this sheet of paper and go to page properties. And this is how you'll change the sheet size. And I can see that it's A4. And if I click this, you can see all the different choices you have, including custom. And then I can change landscape or portrait. So I'm going to make this a portrait orientation. And now I'm going to add my map. And as I was saying, by default, this is going to be the same view of the data as I had in my QGIS map canvas. But I can, if I want to zoom in a little bit more, I can work with this scale right here. So right now it's at 1:1948. I can make this I can lower this number to zoom in or increase this number to zoom out. So I could make this a slightly smaller number to zoom in more tightly to the locale plane. So that's one way that you can adjust the map here. You can also use this button off to the right, move item content. And this lets me shift the content around in the map frame and center it just the way I want. So next, if I wanted to add a title, I would use the text tool, which says add label. And I would drag a box where I want the title to go. And it's going to have this placeholder text. And I can just replace this with treacle quote. And I can choose my font. So down below, I'm looking now at properties of this text in item properties, since that's what I have. So you can see this will change. If I select the map, I get item properties for the map. If I select this text, I get properties for that text. And this button over here with the little cursor is that default button for selecting objects. So I can click the font button and choose a different font. I'll just use something basic like Arial. I can choose the font size. And you can choose, all the other style settings, bold, italic. So those are all the controls for doing that. There's also tools here for doing more fancier things like adding a drop shadow or adding a halo around the text. but I think for the most part, you're going to want just clean designed maps. So just use a straight font. So I can click the back button to go back to main properties. And down below, there's also alignment tools for aligning this text within its box. So if I choose center, it's going to center justify it. Middle, it's going to make it middle, the middle orientation that way. And you can, with any object, when it's selected, you have these little handles around it, so you can resize things and you can move them around. And you'll see it as I start to move this over to the left, you see that little blue line appear. This is called a smart guide, and it will snap automatically when I am lining up to the left, middle, or right side of another object. So if I'm in the center of the sheet, you'll see one off to the right near the bottom. So you can use these to easily align your objects. Now that I'm looking at this map, it kind of needs a frame around it too, so I can select the map and revisit the item properties for the map. If I scroll down, there's a section for a frame. So I can check that and put a frame around the map. Next, I'm going to add a legend. This is probably the thing that usually needs the most tweaking on a map. By default, it's going to add all the layers in my project to the legend, and that's usually more than I want. So the first thing I always do is uncheck this auto update option. And then I can do, for example, select something that doesn't need to be in the legend and click the minus button to remove it. There's also this option to only show items inside the map. So this is a nice option to only show things in the legend that are going to actually appear on the maps. It's a quick filter. So I think I'll go here and just remove some of these other items that I don't want. You can select multiple items with the shift key. And then these have layer names. They're not really good, Danish names. It has an underscore in it. So I can double click on this and just remove that line word and just have the feature name. So you can adjust the layer names in the legend as well as you need to. And now let me put the legend in a better place. Another thing I can do in here, because I noticed on your map sometimes the legend patches are wider, you can adjust the width and the height for the patch of this legend. So I could click the up arrow to start widening that patch so that it looks a little bit more like the recipe book that I got from Bjorn. Like that. And there's a lot you can do with the legend. You can down below there's a place for columns. If you have more than 2 or 3 items in the legend and you need to break it into different columns, you can do that here. So if I broke it into 2 columns, it would do that. There is a spacing section, and you can set all kinds of different spacing, such as the spacing between legend items, space between symbols. If I start increasing that, you'll see that these separate a little bit more. So you can tweak that any way you need to. A lot of controls in here. Okay, so the last thing I'll add to this, well, a second to last thing, I'm going to add the scale bar. So I'll find that right here, add scale bar. And let me put this in the corner here. There are several styles for scale bars. So I can go down here and choose from a number of different styles. The ones I saw on your maps were normally something like more like that. So you can choose whichever style works, and then you can also set here. It's the default right now is it's setting it to 25 meters between divisions. You can adjust that. So down here in this segment section, I could make it 50, for example. So you can set up the scale bar to look exactly as you need. You can include more divisions, fewer divisions, anything you want. You can also change the color. So if I go to display, you can change the font. You can change the colors of the bars. So if you are working on a scale bar that might be on a really dark background, like an aerial photo, you could make the lines in the font white so that they're more visible in this section. And I don't know if you add things like dates to your maps, but I could go down here and add another piece of text. And I could replace this with, there's this dynamic text setting. I could choose the current date, day, month, year, and it will put the current date in there. And since this is being done by this expression using this now function, so this will update every time. If I open this up tomorrow, it will have tomorrow's date on there. So this, if you do have a date on a map and it's going to go through many iterations or edits before it's finished, this is really handy because you don't have to think about it. It will just be the correct date whenever you update the map.
Okay, and can you combine that dynamic text with some text you just write yourself?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I could put, oops.
Yeah.
Caps lock on.
Yeah.
So I can put that in there. You can even, there's variables in QGIS too. So I could type I could put my name on the map if I want to. I could also use a variable for this. So I could go in here and I could choose dynamic text, project author. That actually comes from project settings. I would have to set that first, but I could, current username. That'll be my current username for my account. If people want to, I can show you how to set up these variables. It's not too complicated, but Bjorn, let me know if that's something that's important or not.
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's been used otherwise. I think it's been Gisu made it always, so it's been the same, but now it's changing. So I don't know if it's nice to know who made it, but you probably know, right? And then it will be available at the, I think date, that is maybe nice, but the author I'm not sure, or the
I can't remember if we have some sort of source.
yeah.
Yeah, and there's other things even. There's like project path or layout name. Some of those can be,
we use it actually. We use the location noun and number as a variable in some of the templates we have for maps that we will maybe see next time or later today. I'm not sure, but
yes.
Yeah. So there is some that we will include. Yeah.
Good. Just to quickly show you while I'm here, there's this button next to dynamic text called Insert an Expression. So if I click this, it's going to open up this expression window, and there are we've been talking about variables. So there's all kinds of variables in here, and you have variables that have been created for you that you can use. So you can, any of these variables, if you click on them, you'll see what the value is off to the right. And so these are all like project path. That's where I have my project stored. So you can use any of these to quickly add text to a map, but we won't spend too much time on it. That's this insert edit expression. I can include that in the instructions too. So the other thing I thought I'd quickly show is that we were talking about map themes. So if I select this map, I can tell QGIS to follow a map theme, and that this is my matrical court theme that this should follow. And we're not going to see a change because I already had the matrical court set up. But where that comes into play is, let's say I want to just focus on the, I don't know, maybe the southern end of this locale plane. And so for some reason I have a map that is just the southern part of it. And so in that case, maybe I want a map that shows where this is in relation to the whole locale plane. So I could go back to QGIS and I could turn off some of these other layers and just include the outline of my locale plane. And I could give this a new map theme. I could call this overview. And now I can go back to my print composition, my print layout window, and I can add another map down here. And I can tell QGIS that this should follow the overview map theme. And so now I have two different maps on here, each following their own map theme. And for this one, I can go and add what's called an overview. Another part of the item properties for a map is this overview section. And I can add an overview for map number 1, and see it now shows which part of that my map is looking at. And you can change the symbology. This default pink rectangle is nice, but you can go in there and change that if you want to something else. And maybe I will also zoom in a bit. Oh, did I turn that on? Where did it go?
Yeah.
I don't know what I did. I think I accidentally clicked somewhere, but.
Overview.
Anyway, you know how it works. That's the main thing. I don't want to spend too much time on that. But so that is basically how you set up a map. And so I want you to now try setting up a new basic print layout. You can do anything you want, use any one of the map themes probably, and just experiment with adding a title and a legend and a scale bar, and seeing how that works and get some experience with it.
Yes.
Good. Thanks. siger til, ikke? Hvis det, ja, godt. Jeg opdagede lige pludselig, at der var så meget tilbage.
Egenskaberne, det er jo egenskaber. Er det der? Eller glemte jeg det?
Jeg vil gerne ændre orientering.
Ja, altså det var, ja, prøv det.
Prøv at klikke på selve kortet og højre klik på det. Og så egenskaber. Nej, du har på dansk stadig. Du har på engelsk i stedet for.
Tænker jeg, det går
nok. Der kan du så ændre den fra det. Ja, og ændre den. Jeg tror måske også, du kan tilgå den her op igennem det her layout, fordi når du har en masse ting på, kan det
ja, det var godt, den var derhenne også i forvejen, fordi jeg sagde, at her layout
ja, det
og det gør den, så jeg var bare ikke...
Og så er der nok bare egenskaber for elementer, så
ja.
jeg også håber, det er touch.
Ja.
Du kan hele tiden, hvis du kan gøre den sådan.
Ja,
så skal jeg prøve den ud.
Ja, det kan være, jeg skal hæve ud. Og så.
Ja, det kan jeg. Ja. Det er helt fedt. Du skal have elementerne op på sejlen. Sådan. Så skal vi se, hvad der sker.
Yes. Ja, man kan finde den.
Jamen. Jeg tror også, der eksisterer et bibliotek med nogle af nogle, jeg kunne forestille mig, at Jonas Rasmus har brugt dem.
Ja, som standard med billeder.
Ja, det ved jeg faktisk ikke lige, hvor jeg er. Jeg skriver lige ned, så prøver jeg lige, om jeg kan finde ud af det, fordi så det kunne gøre sig. Det er også meningen at kunne få på.
Vi får et lille Solrød.
Ja, lige præcis. Jeg ved ikke, om det er noget, jeg bruger til os, men det har vi da nogle gange.
Ja, lige præcis. Måske i lokalplanen, hvis jeg har et møde sammen med nogen, så kunne det måske være rart, at der lige er et lille Solrød.
Ja, jeg tror, at den lokalplanen, de her kortbillet, du sætter op efter de netop som de der hovedplan kunne præstere. Ikke? Okay. Så har de der linjer, tror jeg, hvor der også refereres til lokalplannummer. Og men så tror jeg, man supplerer med det der med hvem kilden, altså hvor hvad er det for et program, der lavet i det år. Okay. Er der ikke?
Jo, det er på nogle af dem står der nede i bunden. Det er lavet i QGIS version 1 eller andet måske.
Ja, det er jo sådan noget credit til, eller hvad man bruger på noget.
Ja.
Det tror jeg, at men det var rart nogle af de der genveje, man også bruger i lukkeprogrammerne med, altså, fuld siden, ikke? Eller sådan noget der.
Er det genkendeligt med nogle af de der? Ja, fedt.
Kontrol 0, det er også sådan, så zoomer du ind.
Okay. Ja.
Så du kan bruge det som genveje.
Nå, fedt. Den kendte jeg ikke.
Hvor var det henne, jeg fandt det der?
Er der nogle spørgsmål?
I'm working on the legends, and I'm just wondering where was it that I could remove some of the shown I have said?
Yeah. Good. So with the legend selected and I go to item properties, I have to uncheck auto update. Yeah. And then if I highlight a legend item, I can click the minus button to remove it.
Okay. Yes. Let's see. It takes a while.
Yeah, you can spend a lot of time making a map.
Bring a cup of coffee and then
And this is obviously just a quick introduction. It'll take some practice. Bjorn, another thing to think about, we might be good to have a short question answer period at some point for people with after people have been working on some of this for a couple weeks. We could have schedule a short question answer period where people could ask questions.
After the second course, or
either. Just think about it. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to continue just so that we can get through everything that I wanted to get through this morning. But of course, if you have questions about any of this, please ask.
I just have one comment.
Yes.
Regarding time, Kurt. There is a meeting at 12 here in the same room, just so you know that we have to stop at latest 12.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes, so that's even a better reason to just move on here. So what I wanted to introduce everyone to that I think could really help, you have a lot of nice automation in your workflow with the profile and the project templates and print layout templates and the map themes. And I think another thing that could help is there is this thing called the style manager. And it's this little button under settings here with the point, line, polygon, and text. And if I open this up, it is kind of a headquarters for all the styles in QGIS. And so QGIS comes with some, but there you can tag styles, and so you can see there's the marker symbols that come with QGIS, the line symbols, the fills, but you have your own symbols that you're using for plain Algorand, so all the different ones. And so this could be a place where because this is tied to your user profile. So the symbols that get commonly used could be stored as and tagged as symbols in the style manager so that you could quickly access them. And there's another group of symbols here that is still relatively new called legend patch shapes. So this is, instead of having just point, line, and rectangle icons in a legend, you can change the patches to more represent the item on the map. And you can even use a real feature, such as a building, as a legend patch shape. So that, and I thought this might be an interesting thing to explore. So this is fairly quick to add. So another thing in this style manager is this browse online styles. And if I click on this, it's going to open up the QGIS online style repository. This is kind of for the QGIS community. So anyone can just upload styles in here. So some are very specific, some are artistic, some are very practical. But there's this legend patch shape section here. And Klaus Carlson, a Swedish cartographer, has set up a really nice basic legend patch. So what I'm going to do is click the little download button to download his legend patch shape, and I'm going to save it into my folder. And I'm going to unzip the file. So here is my, all that's in there is this XML file. So that's all I needed to do is download that. And now I'm going to go to my legend patch shapes, and QGIS doesn't come with any when you first install it. You have to create them or import them. So I'm going to import some. So I'm going to click this import button, import items. And I'm going to browse to that XML file that I just downloaded. So there's the XML file. And it includes a lot of really nice legend patches. And I could, for example, tag them with Solrød. I could add them to my favorites. And all I have to do is select all and import. And now if I go in here, I see all these legend patch shapes that I can use on my map. So for example, if I bring my map up again, I can select one of these legend items, and here on this shape button, I can click that and choose one of these legend patch shapes to use instead of this default rectangle. So I could choose any of these, and maybe none of these really work for this particular item, but this is just showing you how quick and easy it is to use those. And the other thing that you can do is you can create your own from actual features on the map. So this will be fast, but it's only a few steps, and I also have it in the step-by-step instructions. So you have all the documentation for how to do what I'm about to show. It's only a few steps. I'm going to make a legend patch shape from the plain Algronstein. So I'm going to select this item and put it into edit mode with the little pencil. And this is we'll be working with this more in the next course. And I'm going to use this button here, which is one that I use to select features. So I'm going to click on this and select the locale plane Algronstein, and I'm going to then, on the digitizing toolbar here, copy features. So I'm copying this feature onto my clipboard, and now I can take this out of edit mode and clear the selection. And I'm going to open up my style manager again and go to my legend patch shapes, and I'm going to add a new fill legend patch shape. And I'm going to highlight the default code that's in there and hit Control V to paste what I put on my clipboard. And whenever you use a real feature like this, it's going to bring in all this information from the attributes. And so you always have to find these 3 closing parentheses at the end and select everything after those 3 closing parentheses and remove it. And then scroll to the top. And there's going to be some kind of function, like a geometry function, like this multi-polygon. And you're going to take everything before that and delete it, because all you need is the geometry. So I have just that one expression, and I'm going to click Save Legend Patch Shape. Give it a name, and I can tag this as like locale plane. Click Save. And now I see it. There it is in my legend patch shapes, and I can click on the locale plane tag and see that one. So you could set up your symbols and legend patch shapes and tag them so that they're easy to find. So now what I could do is I could go into my map, and for this one legend item, apply that patch where it resembles the actual feature. There we go. And tell it to preserve the aspect ratio. And then I'm just going to, I had changed the default size for this. And I want to just put it back to the default. My QGIS seems to be running very slowly. It seems like things are not updating automatically like they normally would. Increase the size of this. So now, anyway, I have a representation of that locale plane Algronstein that is the exact geometry of the real feature. So this is a way that you can really make your legends more intuitive. So you could pick like a sample building, a sample Jordstuka, a sample plane boundary, and you could create legend patch shapes that everyone could then use. And they make your maps a little bit more intuitive, a little bit more interesting than just using rectangles. So that's one thing. And then I want to also talk about layout templates at the end here. So once you have a map set up, like this one that I've been working on here, I could, well, first off, I haven't showed you how to export it yet. I can simply go up here to one of these three buttons and export it as an image or export it as a PDF. So if I export it as an image, I tell QGIS where I want it to go, and it's going to name it the name of my layout by default, which is fine. And I can click save, and it lets me choose the resolution of that, and it will export out the PNG in this case. And when it's done, it's going to give me a little message across the top. And this is a link to the folder where that map was exported. And if I click on that, it will open up my file browser and highlight the map so that I can double click on it and open it up and see how the exported map looks. So that's fairly straightforward. I can also save this as a template. So I could click this button to save this as a template. And what it would do is save the sheet size, the orientation, where my map is, where the scale bar is, where the title is, where the legend is. All of that will be part of my template. So I could so I'm going to save this as a new template. And then what I can do is go back to my project here, and I can go to the layout manager, open up my other window, and I have my one map that I've made, but I can choose new from template. And this is the Kurt Matrikel template that I just produced. So I can say, tell QGIS I want to create a new layout from that template, and click create. And I'll call this, I'll make a map of the northern end. There it goes. And so what I can do is now, pan the map up to the northern end of the area. And everything else is done for me. Everything else is exactly the way I had it set up. So these print templates, Suzanne, as you were realizing, it takes a long time to work on a legend and set up the text and put the scale bar where you want it, and all those things take a long time. So once you have a layout that works, you can save it as a template and then just reuse it over and over and over again. So that's the benefit. Some things that can help too is if you're going to share this across the organization. On some maps, my legend might grow, might increase in size. And so one of the things that's useful to pay attention to when you're going to save a layout as a template is this thing called, it's the reference point. Yeah, it's in position and size here. And this reference point here, this determines what corner this legend will be anchored to. So here it's anchored to the upper left. So that means it would grow down and to the right. And so that's important because as you try to create more print layouts from this template, sometimes you might be in a situation where there's more layers or something like that. And so you may have to leave room for that legend to expand or shrink depending on the different maps you're going to use with it. So this reference point can be important to consider because it determines how that's going to change. So I have a good example. There's a blog post that my colleague Mia Winstrup wrote about layout templates. And this is in Danish. So that's good. Let me put this in there. I'm sure everyone will appreciate that. So she wrote a really nice blog post last fall on using print templates with some really good advice on some of these considerations to include before you create one. And one of those is that reference point. And on this slide here, you can see a map, and what she's doing is changing the scale. And as she changes the scale, what's included in the legend grows or shrinks. And so it's really important that she has the reference point set to the upper left-hand corner so that that's kind of pushed up to the farthest position it can be, to up and to the left. And so it has room to grow down and to the right as it needs to. So that's how that reference point comes into play. So I have some slides in here that I'll give you in the PowerPoint, just a few more that highlight features from her blog post on things to consider when you're saving one of these print templates. Another thing to consider is you might have some maps that have a really dark, saturated background. So you can, if you're going to have a scale bar on top of that, you might think about putting kind of a white halo around the text or making the scale bar a light color so that it shows up on a variety of backgrounds. And then the last thing is that we didn't really talk about yet is that when I open up this print layout, I have these items. There's this items tab. And so everything that I added to the map is a new item. So I have the map that I added first, and then I have the title, matriculcore. And so what you can do here is change some of these to be more generic. So I could double click on this and just call this map title, so that when one of your colleagues tries to use this print template, they know that this refers to the map title and not this other piece of text. So that can help, especially if you have like an image in there. You could call the image logo or something like that, so that people know what different items are supposed to be. Because a title, for example, is something that probably will have to change from map to map. This is something where you will have to go in and type in a different piece of text. So some of that can just help make the items a little more easy to interpret for your colleagues. I think that's all the most important points. The other thing is generally you'll have print templates, maybe from a treacle court, one that's portrait and one that's landscape in orientation, depending on the geography that you're mapping or the publication that you're going to put them in. So you can come up with a whole series of templates. And so one way to approach that is to come up with a layout that really works, and you save it as a template. And then you can right click on the sheet. Go to page properties, and change the orientation to landscape. And you have to spend a few minutes then reorganizing all those elements onto this new orientation of a sheet, and then save that as a template for a landscape orientation. So that's generally the workflow that you have to go through to make a whole series of print templates, is come up with one that works and then adjust it to different sheet sizes or different orientations, and then save those all out as print templates. And the last thing to mention about these is that there's another, we've looked at layer properties and project properties. Another area that's has a lot of useful QGIS-wide settings is this settings menu and this item called options. So if I open up options, there is a layouts tab in options. There's obviously a lot of other settings in here, but I can collapse some of those. We can just focus on this layouts one. And this has a layout path. And so these are different folders that QGIS is going to look in for print templates. And so you are already mapped to a folder in your profile for where your print templates are, but you could add other folders to this and have multiple folders in here where your print templates live. You might have a local set and your networked set, for example. And I don't know if that works into the corporate workflow there, but I just want you to know that that's when I open up the print layout manager and it listed my templates, it listed them because I saved it into a folder that QGIS was looking for print templates in. And I set that here. So when I'm going into project and open up the print layout manager, that's where it's reading those from. And pardon me, QGIS seems to be not responsive. Was there a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that when we use the Lokalplan X skabelon project, there are some templates already included in the project, so it doesn't point to any place. It's just included when you use that as a template.
Okay, good.
There's different ones there included, and because it's included, it's linked to some of the layers as well, so it should be quite easy to use them. And we'll see in the future if we will make like a common position for layouts or what we'll do. Yeah, but at the moment, if you open the project template, there is some, when you go into project up there in the corner, there is layouts that is available in the manager or in the layouts drop out. Yeah, there, exactly. So you will have several templates that we'll try next time with the next course to set some of those up and test those. Because what you did today is actually more difficult than just using the templates. But now you have an idea of how is it to create a new one. That's really good. Yeah, thanks, good.
Yes, and the last thing about the style manager is, so we have, for example, this nice stippled roll symbol here. And if this was something that you wanted to use on other or save, you could click this save symbol in the layer styling panel. And I could save this as, where's my cursor? And I could save it as a locale plane tag and click save. And now I see that showing up as a symbol that can be reused with other layers quickly. So I could, for example, choose Jordstukke and apply that symbol to it very quickly. So if you have a series of basic symbols that you use over and over again, I think it would make sense to have them saved in your style manager and tagged in a logical way so that they're easy to find and use. That would be another way to automate some of the workflow. Especially when you're creating new layers and you want to use that symbol, if you had it readily available like that, that would be fantastic. So thanks everyone for, we went through a lot of material, and thanks for listening to my mitt dårlig dansk when I had to speak it. And just want to remind you that you will have, if I go up to the resources here, I'll be sending out this recording, and there's also about a 10-page document with step-by-step instructions for everything I went through. So if you want to revisit some of that, you have some good things to help you through that, along with the blog posts that I pointed out. And I'll send out this PowerPoint presentation as well. So you'll have all of this to refer to.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thanks.
thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, I know you have to go to a new meeting, so
Yeah.
I hope it goes well, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yes. See you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Have a nice day.
Bye.